Welcome back to The Explainer. So today, we're unpacking what I can only describe as a true political earthquake. I mean, how does a massive two-term incumbent government just fall, and fall so spectacularly? The 2026 Kerala Assembly election results are officially in, and they've completely rewritten the state's political map. We're going to look way past the headlines today and dig straight into the numbers, the demographics, and the raw electoral math to figure out exactly what happened on May 4th.
To make sense of all this, we'll break it down into 6 quick chapters: a historic election mandate, the vote share paradox, shifting demographics and communities, key election swing factors, the NDA historic breakthrough, and finally, the gender representation gap.
Section 1. A historic election mandate.
102. That is the number of seats swept by the Congress-led United Democratic Front, or UDF. It's a massive, absolutely crushing victory that easily crosses the 71-seat majority mark and ends a decade of left rule.
Then we have 35. That's the jarring new reality for the CPI-M-led Left Democratic Front. To put that into perspective, the LDF basically collapsed from a powerful two-term run, losing 64 seats compared to their 2021 performance. It is literally their worst showing in decades.
And finally, 3. The BJP-led National Democratic Alliance broke through to win 3 seats in the Assembly. That's a historic first for the party in Kerala, and it marks a huge shift in the state's traditional bipolar politics.
Okay, let's dive into this. The contrast here is just staggering. You've got the UDF firmly in the driver's seat with 102 seats, while the LDF is suddenly reduced to just 35 in the opposition. And the NDA, they're officially on the board with 3. But here's where the story gets really fascinating. If you look closely at the vote shares driving these seat numbers, the math seems, well, totally broken.
Section 2. The vote share paradox.
So check this out. The UDF secured roughly 43% of the total vote share, right? And the LDF secured about 39%. That is a measly 4 percentage point difference between the two main alliances. And yet, somehow, that tiny 4% gap created a monumental 67-seat gap in the Assembly. I mean, how does 4% equal 67 seats?
Well, this brilliantly illustrates the brutal efficiency of the first-past-the-post electoral system. In our system, there are absolutely no points for second place. The candidate with the most votes in a specific constituency takes the entire seat, even if they only win by a tiny fraction of a percent. So what this data really tells us is that the UDF's votes were distributed with incredible geographic efficiency. It allowed them to just edge past the LDF in dozens of super tight races across the state. Small, statewide vote shifts produced a massive, sweeping seat transfer.
Section 3. Shifting demographics and communities. To really understand the voter base, we've got to look at the baseline demographics of Kerala's 2.71 crore registered voters. The electorate is roughly divided into a 55% Hindu community, a 27% Muslim community, and an 18% Christian community. In a tight three-way contest, how these blocks behave literally dictates everything.
What's really interesting about this data is how the fatal crack in the LDF's foundation formed right here. The 55% Hindu vote, which historically has been their absolute backbone, especially among lower OBC castes, fragmented. The LDF base showed significant cracks, splitting off toward the UDF. Simultaneously, the BJP utilized the Sabarimala narrative and some highly aspirational messaging to consolidate upper caste Hindu votes. So the Hindu vote essentially splintered 3 ways. Meanwhile, the Muslim and Christian blocs, which make up 45% of the state combined, voted incredibly cohesively for the UDF. The UDF-leaning Indian Union Muslim League in the Kerala Congress effectively locked down Central and North Kerala. And you know, when 45% of the demographic map solidifies behind one alliance, and the remaining 55% splinters 3 ways, well, a 102-seat landslide is exactly what you get.
Section 4. Key election swing factors.
The data really points us to 5 major swing factors here. First up, simple voter fatigue. After an unprecedented 10 consecutive years of LDF rule, a really strong anti-incumbency wave had built up. Second, voters heavily prioritized high youth unemployment and the growing brain drain of migration to the Gulf and other states. Third, there were deep, widespread concerns over fiscal sustainability, rising debt, and the LDF's infrastructure focus, which the UDF countered really effectively with their Indira Grantees welfare pitch. And finally, that triangular split effect. The NDA pulling 14% of the vote ended up strategically hurting the LDF's numbers far more than the UDF's.
And the sheer force of this anti-incumbency wave, it spared practically no one, dragging down over 12 trailing cabinet ministers. But for sure, the most symbolically shocking defeat was KK Shailaja at Paravur. Shailaja, a teacher, had become an international icon for her handling of the COVID pandemic, yet she lost in what was considered an absolute LDF stronghold. It perfectly illustrates just how deep the desire for change actually ran among the electorate.
Section 5. The NDA Historic Breakthrough.
The NDA didn't just bump up their vote share, they actually converted it into historic wins. Rajiv Chandrasekhar secured a definitive victory in Nemam, marking the BJP's first capital seat win. And V. Muralidharan survived an absolute nail-biter in the IT corridor seat of Kazakatam. He won by a razor-thin margin of just over 300 votes against the LDF.
But here's the thing. The NDA's story is fundamentally a paradox. They polled around 14% of the total vote. That's roughly 38 lakh votes across the state. Yet because of that first-past-the-post system we discussed earlier, 35 lakh of those votes yielded exactly 0 seats. However, their impact was massive. By pulling those votes, the NDA acted as a strategic spoiler. In 30 to 40 constituencies, like Thrissur and Palakkad, the NDA siphoned enough traditional Hindu votes away from the LDF to allow the UDF candidates to slip right through to victory.
Section 6. The Gender Representation Gap.
Voter turnout for this election was an incredibly robust 78.27%, which is up over 2 percentage points from 2021. And here is a totally crucial fact. Women outnumber men on the electoral rolls in Kerala. There are 13.92 lakh registered women compared to 13.22 lakh men. Women were the primary targets of the campaign trails, with both alliances heavily pushing welfare schemes, like free bus travel and workforce targets, specifically to win their vital votes.
So women drove the turnout. Women literally decided the winner. And yet, 11. That is the number of women who were actually elected to the assembly. Out of 140 available seats, a mere 7.8% of the new MLAs are women.
So the crucial question we're left with is this. Despite Kerala boasting some of the highest social development and female literacy indicators in the entire world, the political reality is starkly disconnected. Female voters make up 51.3% of the electorate, yet they hold only 7.8% of the power in the assembly. As Kerala processes this massive political upset and looks toward the future, we really have to ask, when will political representation in the state finally match the reality of its participation? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. I hope this breakdown really brought the day to life for you. Keep asking questions, and I'll see you next time.